This is my home, the Cascade Mountains in Western Canada. My name is Jeff Turner, and I've spent the past 25 years making wildlife documentaries about wild animals and wild places. I spent my childhood roaming the forests, valleys, and peaks of this range. It's what led me to my career as a wildlife filmmaker. I have photographed wildlife around the world, but now I'm coming home to spend the next year filming the wildlife in these mountains. My home is not a national park or protected area. There have been many changes since I was a boy. But by seeking out the wildlife of my childhood, black bears, coyotes, mule deer, I hope to understand the state of the wild around my home today. And there is one animal I want to find that for me symbolizes Canada's wildlands more than any other: the grizzly bear. But I've never seen one in these mountains, and I wonder, are there any left? Though the nature here has to make its way alongside all the uses humans make of the land, my home is still one of the most beautiful places I have ever seen. These woods where I live are on the edge of the world, between humans and the wild. Beyond us, the forests stretch uninhabited for 30 miles through the mountains. When I was just a kid, I first saw the animal that was going to change my life. The only problem was that it was dead. In the early 70s, a local rancher friend discovered a grizzly bear was killing cows on their summer pasture up in the mountains. Eventually, he caught up with the bear and shot it. Years later, I discovered Aldo Leopold, one of the first American ecologists to write more than 60 years ago about protecting nature. In his book, A Sand County Almanac, he wrote about the death of the last grizzly bear in Arizona, and it really struck a nerve with me. What I didn't know then was how much grizzly bears were going to play a role in my life. I now have such a close relationship with the grizzly that on my last film, I was even able to swim with them and film how they caught fish underwater. Grizzlies are at the top of the food chain and a real challenge for me. For years, the grizzly bear has been declining in numbers in the North Cascade. There's lots of human pressure on this landscape. But if I can still find one here, it would give me hope for the rest of the wildlife in these mountains. It's midwinter and bears are hibernating, so I'll see what other animals I can find. Temperatures can dip to -20 for a week or more. January is generally a quiet time of the year for all wildlife. But it's usually a different story around home. These Bohemian waxwings are drawn in to feed on one of the crabapple trees. We put out seeds and attract all sorts of these wintering forest birds, like the redpolls and chickadees. It's great having this little bit of wild so close to home. But because we feed them, it's not a very good indication of the true state of the natural community. I need to get out and spend more time getting a feel for these mountains again. My work has taken me away so much, I haven't spent the time roaming these hills as I did when I was younger. So I decide it's time for a camping trip. Growing up here, it was easy to take this place for granted. It wasn't until I left that I truly began to appreciate it. My 16-year-old son, Logan, is joining me. Logan has been coming on filming trips since he was just a baby. But we haven't spent the time getting to know our own mountains, as I did with my father. With his growing interest in photography, I'm really looking forward to his help on this project. One of the things I enjoy about photography is the way taking pictures can sometimes change how you look at a familiar place. Time-lapse photography is a wonderful way to get a sense of the landscape and the processes that happen beyond the usual level of our awareness. It's easy to forget that the stars are not fixed and that we live in a world that is constantly moving. I'm surprised we could see the lights from the city of Vancouver 100 miles away. It's a reminder of how much the human influence extends around here now. A 100 years ago, there were still huge areas of wilderness that animals had all to themselves. Not anymore. With our powerful machines, we can go anywhere. It means that wildlife and people are bumping into one another much more than ever before. This is especially true in my old hometown of Princeton, about 12 miles downstream from where I live today. It's pretty much the same as when I was growing up, but there have been some changes. Mule deer have moved into these suburban neighborhoods where I grew up. These deer have access to lawns, flowers, and ornamental shrubs that are nurtured and pampered by the local residents. And there aren't any wild predators here. The town deer have also learned to exploit another source of human-created food. Although we don't like to see wild animals rummaging in our leftovers, to the deer, there's nothing wrong with this. But what I think is really interesting about having the deer in town now is how they're allowing us to rethink our ideas of community. Aldo Leopold wrote about the need to expand the human concept of community to include the non-human things like soil, water, plants, and wildlife. It's been 60 years since Leopold's proposition, but in my old hometown, I think we're beginning to grasp the concept. In late March, the winter melt begins. After the snow melts, the forests in the lower valley bloom with spring flowers. Now is the time to find bear families out of their winter dens. And not far from my home, I'm thrilled to find a mother black bear and her cubs. It looks like she has two, about 3 to 4 months old. They're still so tiny. But these cubs would have been only the size of a squirrel when they were born in the den in February. Mother bears can look a little ragged in the spring. This one's walked through a patch of burdock plants. She's covered in burrs. By feeding around these plants, bears help distribute their seeds throughout the forest. A bear's limbs are jointed, very much like a human. So some of the things they do can look pretty funny. This cub looked like he'd had one drink too many. It feels good to find a mother bear with her cubs. It makes me optimistic that as the season moves on, I'll be able to find a grizzly up in the mountains. May is when the balsam root, we call it wild sunflower, blooms in the forest meadows around my home. For me, it's a sign that the mother deer will soon have their fawns. This is the time of the year when the forest grasses and flowers are at their peak nutritional value. For the woods deer, it's a time to make up for the poor feed they've endured over winter, especially the mothers who have been pregnant. Even though it's June, there's still a lot of snow in the high country. But the long days of sun really begin to turn up the heat, and the rivers swell with meltwater. Water is one of the key components of life. Aldo Leopold often wrote about the importance of water to the landscape, especially in the dry American Southwest. The east slope of the Cascade Mountains are also dry, so this meltwater is critical to the network of lakes and ponds, which are a big attraction for the people that live here, as it is for some of the other members of this community. We're not used to thinking about the needs of wild animals around us. We can't just relegate wild nature to parks and nature preserves. There's not enough of them. We need to learn to share the land. And for many species, their needs are on a scale that makes it easy to share. Loons are one of the most ancient species of all modern birds. They've been around for millions of years. They're excellent swimmers. But their feet are so far back on their bodies, they're awkward on land. It means their nests need to be very close to the shore, so you tend to only find loons on lakes that don't have powerboat activity. Loon numbers aren't what they once were, but they still do make a good living on these quiet lakes. The great blue heron is another species that does well around backwater ponds. But they also have to have a good healthy forest nearby for nesting. It can be a pretty tough life being the smallest heron chick on the nest. It seems that the smaller the animal, the easier it is to share our space with it. These small ponds represent a massive breeding ground for insects. They support a network of creatures like this spotted sandpiper and this dragonfly. Watching the beauty and grace of these small creatures got me wondering what else there is in nature around us that we can't really see. Logan and I took the camera down to the river, and I couldn't believe how beautiful even something as simple as the flow of water over the rocks could be when you slowed it down. You can see how clear the water is, a good indicator of the health of our mountain ecosystem. The smaller creatures can usually find enough space around us to meet their needs. But in these mountains, a grizzly needs about 100 square miles to find enough food to survive. There just isn't enough true wilderness left in our world for them to live free from contact with humans. In America, the grizzly ran out of wilderness 100 years ago. Today, we're at that point in my home mountains. It's no wonder the grizzlies are so hard to find. Been looking for something. Salmon lures these normally shy animals out into the open where I can film them. But finding a grizzly bear in my home mountains is going to be another story. Here, there are no salmon. The rivers on this side of the Cascade Mountains drain east into waterways that have dams which prevent the salmon from getting up into these mountains. Most of the food for bears in this country is forest plants, but it's very hard to spot them feeding under the trees. I know in other mountain ranges, they go up into the high country in the summer to eat alpine plants. But after searching the area, I hadn't seen a single bear. I thought I might be able to spot one or two and focus my search on the ground. But there's too much high country, and the bears are too few and far between to make it practical to use the helicopter. I'm going to have to think of something else. After the helicopter trip, I wanted to go out and find the mother black bear and cubs again. I really needed a bear fix. I knew just where to find her. She was in exactly the same spot as before. Mother bears with young cubs will hang out in a very small area of forest if they feel safe. Young cubs are vulnerable. They can't run very far or fast, but they're excellent climbers. So as long as they're in the forest, they're pretty safe. But watching them hanging from the branches in the top of this dead tree, 25 meters above the ground, I wasn't sure how safe these little daredevils really were. And it was then that I noticed there were actually 3 cubs. I don't know where the third one had been hiding when I saw them before. I also noticed that the mother bear had managed to rub off most of her burrs. She looked to be in much better shape than I remembered. She started calling the cubs to come down from the tree. But she looked a little nervous and agitated. Maybe my presence was starting to bother her. Then I heard something moving through the bush to my right. It was another mother bear with cubs. There were 2 bear families in the same spot. This mother bear that had just arrived was the one that I'd filmed last time, the one with the burrs and the 2 cubs. This was a different family. The mother of the 3 cubs was a bigger and older bear. I could see that now. I realized that the bear with the 2 cubs must be the daughter of the older-looking mother, because the 2 families were so relaxed with one another. In bear society, mothers will share their home territory with their female offspring. I'm always amazed by how animals I think I know so well can still surprise me. I wouldn't have thought that 2 mother bears with 5 cubs between them could have shared this little patch of forest for as long as they did. We could learn a lot from them. The problems we face in sharing the land with wildlife like bears resides more with us than with them. It's not that bears can't live near people, it's that people won't let them. There was one animal I remember seeing a lot of when I was growing up, but so far this year, I had yet to catch a glimpse of one. Then a friend found a family of them living in the woods, and this was something that I had never seen before. A coyote den. I've seen lots of coyotes over the years, but I've never seen pups at a den. They're only a few weeks old and just starting to explore the world outside the den. Coyote pups are the same size as wolf pups when they're born, but they mature much faster. In a couple of weeks, these guys will be weaned and eating meat. It looks like 6 pups, which is average. But coyotes can have up to 19. It must make for a crowded den, so it's no surprise they're coming out here to spread out and sleep. But pup mortality is high. 3 out of 4 won't survive to adulthood. Now that it's mid-July and most of the snow has melted from the high country, I can get out to look for bears again. This remote mountain pass is one place I know grizzlies have been seen in the past. Aldo Leopold wrote that a place was only true wilderness if you could ride a horse across it for 2 weeks without seeing any sign of man. Those days are long gone here in these mountains, but there's still enough space for me to feel the wildness of this place. I wonder if it feels that way to a grizzly, though. We haven't found any bears yet, but we are seeing some animals that like this high, open country. A mountain goat's hooves have a soft inner pad, which gives them excellent grip on these rocky slopes. Further down the valley, we find a herd of mothers and young. Mountain goats don't like to stray too far from the rocky cliffs, as this is their main protection from predators. But sometimes they're forced to come down off the cliff to find fresh green feed. Mountain goats are actually not true goats at all. They're more closely related to antelopes. Not all of the country where I need to look for animals is wilderness. Much of the valley where I live is ranch land. Agriculture is an important part of the community around here. Although agriculture seems a gentle use of the land, throughout history, it has probably been the single biggest source of conflict between humans and the natural world. During Aldo Leopold's era, the sweeping changes to the landscape he witnessed in the American West were largely the result of the cattle industry's war on predators. I have filmed wolves hunting in packs, bringing down large prey. Like the grizzly bear, they are formidable predators. Ranchers found it so challenging to live with these animals that they were systematically exterminated across their entire range in America. The wolves are long gone from these mountains where I live, although there are signs that they're making a tentative comeback. As August draws to a close, the shrinking day length begins to turn the leaves on the aspen trees from green to gold. River levels drop as all the snow in the mountains has melted by the end of summer. Autumn is my favorite time of the year. I love the clear days and crisp, cold nights. And the colors are beautiful. But the vast majority of the forest in our part of the world is evergreen. These trees are adapted to the colder northern climates. Their leaves have a thin needle shape, which reduces their exposure to cold. In recent years, there's been a problem in the forest around our home. Some evergreen trees are changing color now, but it's not due to the season. These trees are dying. I wanted to see the creature that is causing all this destruction.
Beetle there, Buzz?
That's a big one, isn't it? I was surprised at how many bugs we caught in just one night. They seem to be so small to be causing such destruction. These insects have always been a part of this forest ecosystem, but their numbers have been rising, and no one is quite sure why, although global warming is probably having an effect. These tiny bugs are mountain pine beetles. They burrow under the bark and lay eggs which hatch into larvae that chew their way around the tree, girdling it, cutting off the flow of nutrients and water between the roots and crown, eventually killing the tree. The scale at which this is impacting the landscape is huge. Thousands of acres of forest are dead or dying across the eastern slopes of the Cascade Mountains. With warmer winters and drier summers, the beetle has been gaining ground. But what has been a bane for the forest has been a boon for the logging industry. More forests are being cut down now to keep up with the beetle kill than ever before. And the speed with which we can cut down the trees is much faster than ever. Our powerful machines can rip through the forest at an alarming rate. What used to take a team of men a week can now be done in a day or less. All of these dead trees end up at the local sawmill, which keeps the economy of the town rolling. Our machines are so powerful we can go anywhere and do anything we want to the land. We are chewing up the forest and spitting it out. The scale at which we are changing the landscape now is unprecedented. It's never been more critical to show respect to the land and its inhabitants. Although the actual logging can be destructive, it is in some ways the least damaging of the impacts. The forest can grow back. Wildlife can and does live in these areas as the trees regrow. The bigger impact, I think, is the access that the logging creates. Roads into previously pristine valleys. There is virtually no place left in this entire mountain range that can't be reached by road. And everywhere there are roads, there are people. Today, our human world overlays the natural habitat of wildlife so completely that they cannot escape our presence. They have nowhere left to hide. But seeing this little black bear feeding on these rose hips beside the road is the sign I've been waiting for. The fall berry season is going to give me my best chance to find a grizzly. It's September, and time for me to get back into the mountains. Still, finding any grizzly in this massive landscape is going to be a huge challenge, especially since there are so few of them left. As well, our window is short. Snow will start to bury this high country next month. The North Cascade Mountains are a steep, rugged range. It's a lot of work getting around. But the bear's main source of food to fatten them up for winter is here. These are blueberries and huckleberries, and they only grow up high in the mountains. They are full of sugar and excellent eating. Logan is the 4th generation of the family coming up into these mountains to pick berries in the fall. The strategy is to scan these open berry slopes, looking for bears. I remember years ago when I could sit in a spot like this and count up to a dozen or more black bears at one time. After looking for hours, Logan and I only see one. It's a little black bear. This little bear seemed a bit nervous of us. So standing up and rubbing on this tree is his way of showing off a bit, making sure we understand how big he is. I really enjoy it when wild animals treat me like a natural part of their world. Fall is a critical time for bears. These tiny berries are all these mountain bears have available to them to fatten up for winter. This guy seems to be doing well. His coat is rich and black. Despite everything I've seen this year, I'm still optimistic. Spending time with Logan, I realize each generation seems to be more aware of conservation. When I was growing up, we never thought we'd run out of the wild. But Logan's generation is developing a strong ethic, a personal responsibility to the natural world. Time is running out for me in my search for the grizzly bear in my home mountains. Fall is coming to an end, and I still haven't found any sign of them. It was only by walking this path that we would ever be able to learn to love the wild enough to want to save it. For me, the doorway to that path has been through the grizzly bear. It was October, and the first snows were beginning to dust the peaks. I knew this was my last chance to find a grizzly in my home mountains. On this late autumn day, I finally found my grizzly. Even though it was a long way away, as soon as I spotted it, I knew right away what it was. The size and shape of its head and body, the color of its back and hump. Even though I couldn't get any closer, it didn't really matter. Just knowing that they're here is all the proof I need. We need to learn to love the wild, and I think there is no better place to start than with the grizzly. 100 years ago, Aldo Leopold saw the last grizzly in Arizona. The fact that today I can still find a grizzly bear in my home mountains, despite the impact of our use on the land, gives me hope for the future. One of my inspirations for making this film was a short story written by Aldo Leopold from his famous book, A Sand County Almanac. It's a story of the grizzly in the mountains of Arizona, and although it happened 100 years ago, Leopold's insights still ring true today. In 1909, Aldo Leopold came to work in eastern Arizona at a time when the American Wild West was coming to an end. Leopold was a man who enjoyed nature and the outdoors. He reveled in the raw wildness of this new country. His love for this wilderness was captured in his story called Escadilla, which was about a mountain and the grizzly bear that lived upon it. The mountain was the symbol of the foundation of wild nature that was present and visible in all aspects of his life in Arizona. After graduating from the Yale School of Forestry, Leopold got a job in the Apache National Forest, measuring the area's virgin timber to determine the extent of the lumber that could be removed. He wrote about his mixed feelings in converting these beautiful trees into remote notebook figures representing hypothetical lumber piles. But he could always emerge from a long and tiring day in the woods to be refreshed by the sight of the great mountain hanging on the horizon. As he wrote it, but on the next ridge, a cold wind roaring across a sea of pines
blew his doubts away. On the far shore hung Escadilla. There was in fact only one place from which you did not see Escadilla on the skyline. That was the top of Escadilla itself. Up there, you could not see the mountain, but you could feel it. The reason was the big bear. Old Bigfoot was a robber baron, and Escadilla was his castle. No one ever saw the old bear, but in the muddy springs around the base of the cliffs, you saw his incredible tracks. Seeing them made the most hard-bitten cowboys aware of bear. Wherever they rode, they saw the mountain, and when they saw the mountain, they thought of bear. Campfire conversation ran to beef, bales, and bear. Bigfoot claimed for his own only a cow a year and a few square miles of useless rock. But his personality pervaded the county.
Leopold lived in the American West at a time when it was undergoing massive change. Progress was coming to cattle country, and progress had various emissaries. One was the first transcontinental automobilist. Automobiles were just beginning to replace the horse as the main means of transport. Another was a member of the women's suffrage movement that traveled the land promoting the new and radical idea that women should have the same rights to vote as men. Another change saw the stringing of the first telephone lines through the wilderness. Now, even the far-flung corners of the land were being connected by wires that could transmit instantaneous messages. And Leopold also wrote about another emissary of progress, but one with a much darker mission.
A government trapper, a sort of St. George in overalls, seeking dragons to slay at government expense. Were there, he asked, any destructive animals in need of slaying? Yes, there was the big bear. The trapper packed his mule and headed for Escadilla. In a month, he was back, his mule staggering under a heavy hide. there was only one barn in town big enough to dry it on. He had tried traps, poison, and all his usual wiles to no avail. He had erected a set gun in a defile, through which only the bear could pass, and waited. Into the string and shot himself. It was June. The pelt was foul, patchy, and worthless. It seemed to us rather an insult to deny the last grizzly the chance to leave a good pelt as a memorial to his race. It was only after we pondered on these things that we began to wonder who wrote the rules for progress. Since the beginning, time had gnawed at the basaltic hulk of Escadilla, wasting, waiting, and building. Time built three things on the old mountain: a venerable aspect, a community of minor animals and plants, and a grizzly. The government trapper who took the grizzly knew he had made Escadilla safe for cows. He did not know he had toppled the spire off an edifice, a building, since the morning stars sang together. We forest officers, who acquiesced in the extinguishment of the bear, knew a local rancher who had plowed up a dagger, engraved with the name of one of Coronado's captains. We spoke harshly of the Spaniards who, in their zeal for gold and converts, had needlessly extinguished the native Indians. It did not occur to us that we too were the captains of an invasion, too sure of its own righteousness. Escadilla still hangs on the horizon, but when you see it, you no longer think of bear. It's only a mountain now.
And there's more from the natural world coming up next here on BBC HD. Stay with us.